Angelic Buster is MapleStory's idol. She's also the Pirate Nova class of Maple, with pretty vibrant colors and pretty big damage. Recently she got a rework, which had a few changes to how she plays as a whole. Nothing drastic or damaging. In fact, it's the exact opposite. They made her so much more straightforward to play, to the point where, in my opinion, she's one of the easiest classes to play in this game. Not only is she easy, but her mobility and capabilities for both grinding and bossing are all still pretty well-rounded and easy to understand too. Let's start with explaining all her skills. Starting from the beginner tab, you get a rope lift skill for moving up fast, an attack you use by simply just holding down your attack key that lets you move around while using it, but not jump. And also a couple purely fun skills, like this skill that lets you stage a concert and change the background music for any town map, playing a bunch of different Angelic Buster songs. It even changes the songs for all nearby players. 1 hour cooldown in between uses, and it stops if you move at all. You also get to have 2 different outfits on at all times that you can swap between with dress up, though sadly, you can't choose which outfit you want to wear while in combat. The transformed mode will always be the one you attack with. Also, while transformed, by default it hides most of your equipped gear, so things like aquatic letter eye or your cape and such won't show up. When you hit level 70, you also get this link skill, Terms and Conditions, which is arguably one of the most useful bossing links in the entire game. It's recommended to get to level 210 just for the level 3 version of this, which ups your damage by 60% for 10 seconds every minute. For AB, that damage is doubled to 120%. Later on down the line, at I believe 200, you also get a passive for a little extra mastery. First job is short and simple. It has 2 passives, one for mobility and one for max health and attack speed, a basic mobbing skill, and a flash jump that can be used twice in the air, as well as gives you an up jump. Though do keep in mind, if you up jump, you can't use your flash jump afterwards until you touch the ground again. You can, however, use rope lift / grappling heart after up jumping though. On the second job, you get a bunch of passives for mastery, final damage and stats, reduced damage taken, and resistances and crit rate. Skills-wise, all that's left here is Pink Pummel, which is your rush-like skill, moving you forward and knocking enemies back, and Lovely Sting, which is just another basic mobbing skill. Third job, same story, different coat of paint. All these passives for damage, defense and knockback resistances that both add up to 100%, and crit rate and crit damage. Star Crash is another basic mobbing skill, and Soul Seeker is a skill that lets you spam these balls that fly towards enemies and have a chance to respawn and make more, up to a cap of how many times they can be recreated. At fourth job, this skill gets a toggle variant, and while yes, it's a lower chance to create souls with every hit, it's attached to most of your attacks with the same recreation chance and all. You even get additional creation chance with these 2 new skills. First, Celestial Roar is your basic mobbing skill you'll be using from here on out that has a large hitbox and gives a chance to stun enemies. Trinity is your main bossing skill, doing a bunch of lines on 3 enemies. It even gives you an IED buff that stacks up to 2 times for 30 seconds every time you use the skill. You also get your typical expected Maple Warrior and Hero's Will skills, a couple passives from mastery and skill damage, a crit damage buff with no cooldown, and 2 more attacks. Soul Resonance is a hold down skill that sucks in enemies and deals damage to everything caught within it. At the very start, for the first 2 seconds, you're invincible, so it's an iframe, and at the very end it does a big explosion, dealing bonus damage if used on bosses. It can be held up to 8 seconds total, and while being held, you take reduced damage and gain super stance. You don't have to hold it for the whole duration though, but know all the effects of it stop when you do release the skill. 1 minute cooldown. Lastly, at 4th, Finale Ribbon is a big attack that places a damage over time, dot, on enemies, as well as a party-wide debuff that makes them deal 20% more damage for a whole minute. Just your party members though. AB doesn't get any increased damage from this skill on enemies, beyond the dot and the initial burst of damage. 40-second cooldown. Hyper skills for Angelic Buster start off by giving her a playdown skill, Supreme Supernova. It only lasts for 12 seconds, but covers a pretty large area and deals good damage. 1 minute cooldown. Final Contract is a buff that gives a bunch of various stats. Attack, percent damage, IED and boss damage, crit rate, and resistances. 30-second duration, 2 minute cooldown. Pretty Exaltation is another buff that lasts for 20 seconds and gives some final damage, but also beefs up your Soul Seekers. Extra chance to create and recreate them. 2 more created throughout its duration, and just about halving their damage, multiplied with Soulseeker Expert's final damage reduction effect. It's still a damage increase with the extra balls flying around, despite the wording. 1 minute cooldown. Hyper passives are all mostly nice upgrades to your main core kit. For Soulseeker, you'll want Makeup for extra soul recreation chance, and Reinforce for extra damage per soul attack. Piercing would be a nice one to have since AB's base IED is fairly low in comparison to other classes, but there's better options for hyper passives, like Finale Ribbon's Armor Break, which permanently gives you passive IED. The upgrade for extra damage isn't really necessary, but early on while grinding up to 200, Cooldown Cutter is a nice upgrade. Lastly, moving on to Trinity, your main bossing skill, you'll want Reinforce for extra damage, and Extra Strike for an extra line of damage. The IED one, again, is fine, but since you only get 5 hyper passive points, the best option would just be Finale Ribbon Armor Break over any of the other IED upgrades that only apply to those skills. 5th job is fairly nice, and 3 of AB's own skills share similar cooldowns. The one exception to this being Trinity Fusion. It's simply just an attack that can either be used by itself or during Trinity's animation. While you're attacking with it, it also gives Super Stance, ignores Damage Reflect, and reduces your damage taken. It also summons a lot of Soul Seekers when used. 16-second cooldown, going down to 13 seconds at max level. You also passively get some dex from it. Sparkle Burst does a big explosion of damage when used, and then gives a buff for 30 seconds after that. When that buff reaches the end of its duration, or if you click the skill again, you get a 10-second iframe. 2 minute cooldown. Mighty Mascot is a hold down burst attack that lasts for about 2 seconds. You can move around during it much like your beginner skill, Soul Buster, and similarly, you can't jump during it. It does base damage while casting, and at the end of its duration, or if you release it early, it does another burst of damage. It also reduces damage taken from max health attacks. 1 minute cooldown. Lastly, for AB only skills at 5th, Superstar Spotlight summons 3 spotlights on screen that give you status resistance, crit rate, and final damage. The skill says while you are within the spotlight, but ignore that bit. You get the stat increases regardless if you're in the actual spotlight or not. The spotlights also deal damage to enemies they pass through, with each subsequent hit doing 75% less final damage. 30-second duration, 2 minute cooldown, and it also changes your background music to Fly Away during it. Shared Nodes time, starting with Nova Shared Nodes. Grandest Goddess's Blessing builds up 1 charge every 4 minutes, up to 2 charges, and for Nova classes, gives you a chance to skip skill cooldowns a few times throughout its duration of 40 seconds. It also gives you a % damage buff while it's active. Might of the Nova is a skill that does a big explosion in an area around you, and gives you a buff afterwards that gives you an extra life for about 8.5 minutes at level 1, going up to 16 minutes at max level. 20 minute cooldown at all levels, and it should be noted it doesn't stack with Bishop's extra life, Heaven's Door. For shared pirate nodes, let's start with Overdrive. It's a nice, neat little buff that gives you % attack, based on your character's base weapon attack power, for about half a minute. Once its duration ends, your base weapon attack power reduces by 15% until it's back off cooldown. 70-second cooldown at level 1, going down to 60 seconds, or 1 minute, at max level. Lastly, Loaded Dice has 2 different skills attached to it. First, Loaded Dice itself lets you pick a number between 1 and 6 for different buffs. These are the buffs for each number, but the main ones you'll be caring about are 5 and 6. 5 gives you extra damage, and 6 gives you extra XP. Once you've chosen whichever number you want, you can use the second part of this skill, Roll of the Dice. Any pirate classes that don't inherently get a dice rolling skill, all eventually get one at 5th job through this shared node. Anyways, click it and it just gives you that buff you chose. 3 minute duration, 3 minute cooldown. Angelic Buster isn't all that difficult to grasp or understand, but people still might want some help, so let's make them easy. First and foremost, her Link skill, Terms and Conditions, is one of the best in the entire game for I'm pretty sure every class, specifically wall bursting and bosses. Even more so now that it's a 1 minute cooldown, and because it's also extended by buff duration, and can be cooldown skipped. If you're playing AB just to get that, I recommend pushing her to 210 to get the max level of the Link at level 3, which gives 60% extra skill damage for all non-AB classes, up from 30% at Link level 1, or 45% at Link level 2. Thankfully, the duration of all 3 levels are the same, sitting at 10 seconds. Also, again, AB gets double the effect of this, so her terms and conditions at level 3 is 120% extra damage. Angelic Buster's total skills she uses frequently are pretty low compared to most other classes, so if you like having very few buttons to remember, you'll like this class. Like, look down at my keybinds. That's everything I use, with plenty of extra room for whatever I get in the future. You could achieve even less buttons than this too, seeing as you don't particularly need Trinity Fusion on a button, or other one-time use skills like Loaded Dice or Soul Seeker Expert. I'm not certain of this myself, but I feel like AB would be a great class to try out if you wanted to try playing Maple with a controller. See that thing on your arm? That one, right there? That's your Soul Ring, which is AB's secondary. Normally you can't hide it, nor anvil it to make it look like a prettier one. If you wanted to hide it, toss on a transparent shield from the cash shop, and it goes away. Thankfully you can get these for pretty cheap nowadays if you play regularly, through buying a temporary 90-day one in the reward points shop for 2,000 reward points. I thought it would be worth at least mentioning it, just in case someone gets annoyed with how it looks for whatever reason. AB doesn't get a lot of visual IED on her stats, but some skills give hidden IED bonuses, things like Final Contract while it's active, or Trinity and Trinity Fusion through their stacking buff, but only on those skills. On that same note, you'll still want more IED because it's still kind of low even if you factor in those hidden bonuses. Increasing it through Links and Legion, equipment set bonuses, hyperstats, familiars, and potential lines through Weapon Secondary Emblem all help. Grinding is pretty simple and straightforward. The main option is jump around and attacking with Celestial Roar, and using your cooldown skills like Finale Ribbon, Trinity Fusion, Soul Resonance, and Sparkle Burst whenever they come off cooldown. Also placing down Urta Shower and Will Skill, etc. if you have any of those. If you're not quite strong enough to one-shot with Celestial Roar, Trinity does a lot more damage and still mobs a little bit, while also sending out Soul Seekers, so it might be an okay enough option. The second option, only if you're strong enough and or just lazy, is to keep spamming Soul Seeker and letting your souls fly out and clear enemies on screen or nearby you. Bossing is also, thankfully, very simple and straightforward. Spam Trinity and Trinity Fusion whenever it comes off cooldown, and if you're bossing in a party, remember to cast Finale Ribbon every minute for its 20% extra damage debuff on bosses. And again, remember it doesn't apply to you, just your whole party. Saving Trinity Fusion as a damage reduction or super stance skill is a good idea too, thanks to its shorter cooldown. Since most of Angelic Buster's cooldowns are all short, that means you can do a small burst of damage every minute, and a bigger burst every 2 minutes. I'll talk more about that in the burst/BA section of the video. While cooldown hats do help with a lot of AB's kit, they're seen as arguably optional. If you're rolling your hat and come across either a lot of -second cooldown lines, it's worth keeping that for sure, but if you just happen to get some mix of dex and -1 or 2 second lines, that's fine enough too. Any amount of cooldown reduction is fine. This is mainly because you'd be able to spam Trinity Fusion more often, and the additional souls that fly out every time you use Trinity Fusion alone make up for the main stat you'd lose from those stat lines. Cooldown reduction also affects other shorter cooldown skills like Supreme Nova and Overdrive. Again, whichever you run into first is fine enough to keep, but much later on if you wanted to be really min-maxy about it, or if you wanted in specific a higher culvert score, a cooldown hat is worth getting. You could even have one of each and try them out for yourself, or just keep one around for guild culvert. Link skills, yeah, you probably know the drill by now. They're the same as every other class. Grinding links will consist of a nice blend of Evan, Mercedes, and Aran, and Lara for some extra normal enemy damage, and then fill in the rest of the slots with whichever damage dealing links you have or think would work best. A layout like this is good. For bossing, you save a slot that typically every other class has to use up, since Terms and Conditions is built into AB. Regardless, you'll still want more damage dealing links, the usual suspects of Demon Slayer, and Avenger, and Kana, and also Luminous for some more IED, plus whatever else you have and or think would work best. A typical layout being something along the lines of this. If you needed extra survivability in bosses, Resistance Link helps give 8 seconds of invincibility every time you revive. Very useful for tougher bosses. Moving on to inner ability, for that first line, attack speed +1 is a necessity in GMS. Angelic Buster benefits greatly with every new stage of attack speed, and she just feels so buttery smooth having capped out attack speed at stage 10. also known as attack speed 0 for some reason. With the attack speed +1 IA line, all you need after that is the usual decent speed infusion and monster part green potion. For second and third lines, boss damage or buff duration are both good to have. The boss damage one is self-explanatory. Buff duration, however, is because, yeah, your link skill terms and conditions. You get 120% extra skill damage out of it every minute, and since buff duration increases how long it lasts, that's just a massive increase in damage with every extra percent of buff duration you gain, through whichever sources. Abnormal status damage is usually a decent upgrade too instead of boss damage, but you'd be getting more damage out of just the boss damage line. For grinding IA lines, since presets are an extremely useful new addition to Maple, you can set one up with any mix of attack speed +1, meso, drop, or normal monster damage. An attack speed line is optional for grinding, but it really does help make everything you do much more comfortable. Trinodes for AB. She falls into the category of classes where she doesn't have one specific set of perfect nodes if you plan to main her. As a boss mule though, let's do that first and get it out of the way. Soul Seeker, Trinity, and Supreme Supernova. The more important of these three being Seeker and Trinity, because that's where nearly all your non-5th job damage comes from in a boss fight. Supreme Supernova is still good for when you burst too. If you wanted a grinding Trinode as a boss mule, it'd be the same layout, except now you'd replace Trinity with Celestial Roar, since that's your main mobbing skill. Otherwise, if you plan to main Angelic Buster, you'll want Trinodes consisting of any of the following 6 skills: Trinity, Celestial Roar, Soul Seeker, Supreme Supernova, Soul Resonance, and Finale Ribbon. These are all skills you'll be using throughout just about everything you do, all for various purposes. Finale Ribbon and Soul Resonance I'd argue are the least important ones here, since they don't really do most of your main damage, but they'll still be used for things like debuffing a boss for your whole party excluding you, and defense via Resonance's iframe and damage reduction. So it's just good to have them around and be stronger if you're going to be using them anyways. For Burst/BA, toggle on Soul Seeker Expert for those passive souls flying at enemies with most attacks you do. Also buff up with any of your non-cooldown buffs, like Stargazer and Maple Warrior. Then, simply pop Overdrive, Pretty Exaltation, Terms and Conditions, Supreme Supernova, and Sparkle Burst. Hold down Pretty Mascot until it goes away, which takes about 2 seconds, and then go back to spamming Trinity and Trinity Fusion whenever it comes off cooldown. What I just detailed there was your longer 2-minute burst. Since AB has fairly shorter cooldowns, they also get a mini burst every minute. To do this, just cut most of those longer cooldown skills you clicked in the 2-minute burst by half, so instead you just do this. Buffs, Overdrive, Pretty Exaltation, Terms and Conditions, Supreme Supernova, hold Mighty Mascot about 2 seconds, spam Trinity and Trinity Fusion whenever it comes off cooldown. This is one of the easiest classes I've learned a burst rotation for. It's shocking to me how minimalistic it is. Just pop your buffs, hold down one button for a couple seconds, spam your main bossing skill. That's it. Even when you hit 6th job, your origin burst is the same as the 2-minute one, but now you use your origin skill right after Supreme Supernova. Angelic Buster, in my opinion, is a great introductory class for those wanting to get into Maple, without overcomplicating the game too much with learning tons of skills. You can get by just fine for most of your levels by just remembering like what 4 skills do. Everything else will come to you in time. Plus, I also like their dress up feature. It's cool they hide most of the blemishes most characters are plagued with, like weird looking boss equipment. Thanks to the Angelic Buster Discord for a really quick, simple, and easy to understand layout for their channels, documenting and explaining every aspect of this class. And thank you for watching this video. If there's more classes you want me to cover next, suggest some to me down in the comments. If you just like my videos and want to support the channel, consider subscribing to the channel. With this AB video guides release, I've now finished off all my Nova class guides. Will the next guide finish off another set of characters? That's for you to decide. And for me to decide by looking to see what people want the most, and what I think would be the most fun to do in that moment. That's all.